Saya.
Hi, this is Laica.
This is Paroma, and you're listening to Stars in My Pocket.
Today we're really excited to welcome a special guest whom some of you may know from her website, KoreanDrama.today, ODESSA Jones. And if you've been reading her website, you'll know she has a fascination for all things Jisung, especially the show we're going to talk about today, KBS drama Secret, which is also called Secret Love, which aired in 2013 starring Jisung and Hwang Jung-eum. ODESSA, thank you so much for joining us. We're really excited to have you here.
Hello, I'm glad to be here.
Yay! So the show tells the story of a woman who takes the fall for her boyfriend's hit and run, which kills the woman that Jisung was in love with. And the rest of the show is about all the ways that he tries to punish her for that. And of course they end up falling in love instead. Or maybe love isn't the right word, Odessa.
I think that's why I think it's so interesting to talk about this drama, because even though it was in 2013 that it aired, I think people who watched it still remember it. You guys remember what an effect it had on you when you watched it. And it's a drama that lots of people have rewatched. It's also a drama that lots of people hate. So I think that to me is why it's really interesting. The love story is very dark. Very, 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 very dark. And it's really arguable whether it's a love story or a story of sexual obsession or something like that. It's not a healthy relationship. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, and that's especially emphasized through their first kiss, where he is completely obsessed with her, and she doesn't know what the hell his problem is.
You're talking about the part in the car where he like forcibly kisses her for like 5 minutes and she's struggling, right? Because I was so upset by that. I was like,
was
what?
hard to watch.
That's a horrible scene.
Yeah.
The fun part of talking about this drama right now is that Odessa and I we watched this while this was airing, but Laica and Paroma have just come off it, and Laica literally a few hours ago. So
yep, I'm fresh.
Yeah. And when it comes to that scene with that kiss, I mean, it is an inexcusable scene. I mean, it's assault. Like, he assaults her. But what I remember, what really struck me at the time seeing it, what struck me was that I had seen in Korean dramas, there was, unfortunately, already there's this trope of like the forced kiss, or this you over and over again you see, and maybe this is changing. Like I think there's a lot of changes happening in K-dramas and in Korean society, but 5 years ago, dramas, there were a lot of times that like the heroes would kiss the heroine, and the heroine would like be struggling to push him off at first, and then would be like, oh, I guess I do love him after all, and then they would play romantic music and it would all be happy, you know?
Like
and that was like something I
Secret Garden.
Right. And then when I saw it in Secret, I was really struck by the fact that it was totally horrifying. Yeah.
So do you think the kiss was meant to be troubling, or was it selling it to us as romantic?
I think that the show, even if it wasn't, I think it was capitalizing on the fact that the audience is already used to seeing heroes pose a kiss on the heroine, especially when you already know that these two might end up together. You're sort of conditioned to expect these two to kiss at some point, and the forced kiss wasn't as problematic a few years back as it is today. Like, more people are aware of how problematic it is. So I think what the show was maybe trying to do is capitalize on that, but also put it in a context that makes you uncomfortable. Like, this is not a situation where, the hero, the sort of arrogant hero kisses an unwilling heroine and you think, oh, well, you know what, she does want to be with him, but it's how he does it that's problematic. This here, Yoo-jung is still she's in bereavement. She thinks her child is dead. She is trying to recover from a broken heart. She has a lot of horrible things happening to her. She's horribly vulnerable, and she doesn't understand his obsession with her. So this is all kinds of problematic. So yeah, the context itself kind of makes us uncomfortable, and I think that's what the show was going for. Mm-hmm. If that makes any sense.
But at the same time, like, I wouldn't feel so icky. I mean, it's horrible in any context, but then, like, what makes me feel even worse about it is the fact that, like, he does that thing where, like, he kind of backs off and then he, like, gets on his knees and then he gives her, like, a real kiss and then she responds. And, like, if there wasn't that part, then I would have said, yeah, definitely they're trying to show that it's wrong and like, problematic. But then I'm like, what is that? Like, what are they trying to say? Like, she's okay with it? Like, I don't know. That gave me a weird feeling. I don't know what you guys think about that. And he never apologizes.
And it's never addressed. It's never addressed.
Yeah.
But something that actually makes us sort of, it's not that it makes us okay with where their relationship is going, but something that sort of makes us root for them is the fact that Yoo-jung has no one in her life. Like, she has her friends, but she has no one who loves her right now. She has to take care of an ailing father. Her child is apparently dead. Her fiance is distant and very unhelpful, not to mention a complete asshat. So in this situation, like, Min-hyuk is the only one who is, like, he's following her around, he's helping her, even though he doesn't seem very happy with himself when he's doing it. He is making her life more difficult. On the other hand, he is the only source of, not affection, but I suppose attention. Yeah, and that, as horrible as it sounds, sometimes when you're really low in your life, you need that.
Mm-hmm. I want to take it back to the kiss again, because what Laica said was very interesting about the how this progresses, and I do think I read it differently. I think when she stops struggling, that it's like it's not a romantic thing. I think it's like an exhaustion thing. I feel like it's another sign of how exhausted she is by this guy. Okay. That, like, because remember, there's that scene where she runs into traffic to get away from him. Like this is why it's such a dramatic and strange story, because there's so many of these scenes where we really see her trying to get away from him, and I felt like in the kiss she just sort of loses energy. You know, it's more like, Jesus, this guy. It looked, I think, to me, that's what made it really look like an assault in a way. The fact that it just sort of kept going, you know, like she struggles and he doesn't care. He's not listening to her at all. Like, she's not a person. He doesn't listen to her at all.
Yeah, like, he doesn't give up until he gets what he wants, which is really, yeah, it was very upsetting.
Which is for her to, like, be calm and nice, and for him to be able to think to himself, oh, that was great. You know, she likes me. Yeah.
But what actually happens is that he overpowers her, and this, like, it brings into relief the big power difference between them as well. I mean, Jisung he's a chaebol, he's extremely powerful, he's managed to, like, ruin her life, in every possible way. So, like, he can basically do what he wants to her, and she doesn't have any power the only power she has is to say no. And she uses that power a lot. I remember when I was watching this, and I might not feel this way now. I recognize this because this was the very first melo I watched, and it was the very first revenge melo I ever watched as well.
Oh,
so
wow.
I was really impressed with her character because she was very forbearing, and, like, she had an air of self-respect that nobody could ever put down. Like, no matter how much money he had, he couldn't. There were things that he couldn't stamp out of her, and one of them was her dignity.
Was she dignified, or was she just like forbearing to a point of, like, just being a doormat? Like, I'm sorry, and especially in the beginning where she was like, "I'm gonna go to jail for you." I was like, "What are you doing?" Like,
so this is what I mean about I might not feel this way now, but because it was the very first time I'd ever seen this kind of story ever. I saw her in a way that I don't think I would now, and I'd be like, why are you doing this?
It feels like a much older drama, and I don't know if it's because I don't really watch melodramas very often, but it feels like kind of a throwback, and it shows us behavior that we've, especially now in 2017, we don't expect to see in Korean dramas anymore. So I feel like it was almost more disturbing.
So the question that was interesting to me when I watched it was, why was it that I found it very compelling? Like, even though the hero and the heroine are both, I think, like, certifiably have problems, that they in a country with better mental health care, like, they would go get all these problems taken care of before they even tried to have a relationship, because they are having the most unhealthy relationship. It's an abusive relationship where he, even once it develops into a romantic relationship, it started with abuse. It continues in a really uncomfortable way. Why is it that I found it very compelling despite all of that? And I think it's partly because the writer sets out as a goal to tell really kind of what sounds like an impossible story. Like, and I've watched a bunch of melodramas, and a lot of the melodramas are like really, a lot of melodramas are not particularly entertaining, and I don't automatically like feel like I need to watch all the way to the end. I need to know what happens. And with Secret, I needed to know what was going to happen. I was really hooked. And a lot of other smart women who found Min-hyuk's behavior really repulsive, nevertheless, like, we wanted to keep watching. And others didn't. I mean, lots of women like tuned off and were like, "This is really bad. This is horrible. Why is anyone watching this? I don't understand." But so I wonder why it is that I found it so compelling, and I think it's partly because it's just such an impossible story, because it is like, it sets up the premise itself is impossible, which is compelling.
There's this really hilarious sentence in the show synopsis which makes me laugh every time I read it. Min-hyuk is a rich guy who has everything but a good personality. Let's pass it to Paroma, who had something to say for a while. Sorry.
I feel differently about the show than Laica does. In that I don't think it's very dated. It's shot really well. The plot structure is pretty tight. It never actually lags at any point. It's always moving. And with older dramas, one of the main issues that we have is pacing. And this drama does pacing really well. If it's not focusing on Min-hyuk and Yoo-jung, then it's focusing on Do-hoon and Se-yeon, both of whom have their own, bizarre personalities and peculiar justifications for their actions. I don't think they actually have normal characters in this.
Yeah. Okay. Everyone is dysfunctional. It's true.
Yeah. However, since we were talking about Min-hyuk's behavior, I have to admit that it's not so much his behavior with Yoo-jung that I found problematic, because it's not, given the context of what he was going through. He thought that she had killed his girlfriend, like the mother of his unborn child, along with the unborn child. It's a horrible headspace to be in. And while she was getting punished, it was just 5 years in jail. Look, if she actually had run over his girlfriend, I would actually be completely rooting for him to ruin her life. The thing that I did find problematic that they never addressed, and it still bugs me, is that Min-hyuk, like when she was in jail, prison, Min-hyuk goes and talks to Do-hoon about, basically making sure that she doesn't get parole, and then Do-hoon does that horrible thing where he makes sure that her child, like their child, is taken away from her. And it's fine. I understand that Do-hoon did it, and Yoo-jung, when she found out, she hated Do-hoon for it. But Min-hyuk was the one who sort of, I don't know, he enabled that entire thing. He triggered that thing, he made sure that it happened.
Yeah.
Exactly, that's the word. He was the instigator. So I look, if it was me and my child,
forgive him for that?
Exactly, like she forgives him for this. I mean, this one thing, that's a huge thing. That was her child who was taken away, and she believed that the child had died. So how did she manage to forgive Min-hyuk? That's one of the biggest issues for me.
So for me, like that, what I understood, and like I just watched it, so it's pretty fresh in my memory, is that like he wanted her to stop getting out of parole, and he told him, don't let her get out on parole, which basically means like for her to fulfill the full sentence, which is, you know, it's a legitimate thing for him to want, even though he did it in like a corrupt way. But like he, Do-hoon actually didn't want the fact that he was being influenced in any way to show up. So before the evaluation could even go through, he had that girl do that thing so that her son would get taken away, so that the whole parole just became nullified and nobody would know even like what he said. Does that make sense?
So Min-hyuk didn't actually know what form that would take.
I understand that he didn't know what it would take, but it still ended up in this thing, which was cataclysmic for a mother. So again, you know, just by the order of things.
Yeah, but I mean, if you start talking about like what triggered what, like there were so many things that triggered other things that you could like blame people for, and then it's just like this rabbit hole of people who are just doing really messed up things. Like Do-hoon's parents, his mother was like insane. Like, how can you do that to your own grandchild and your own son who you claim to love? Like, I did not. That was crazy. Go ahead. Anyway, sorry, that was kind of a tangent. Go ahead.
Well, I think the reason is for her being able to forgive Min-hyuk for losing her kid and not blaming him for it is pretty much what Laica said. But though he had asked Do-hoon to do something, he didn't know that it was going to take that form. Like, up until the end, Min-hyuk didn't know that Do-hoon had done that. Like, he thought the kid was dead as well. He didn't know that this whole other story was playing out on Do-hoon's side. I was gonna add something else. Hold on. Oh, again, like the way this all ended up is revenge melos. Basically, I discovered after watching this that revenge melos are what I've been looking for my whole life. Don't even ask.
Really?
Because like basically revenge melos can play out in one of two ways, which is like well or badly. So bad revenge melos are the worst. Why? Because they don't give you any fulfillment. They don't exercise your grudges. And I'm gonna ask ODESSA to explain about Han here in a second. But the good revenge melo, of which I would say Secret is definitely one, but also dramas like Golden Cross and your favorite as well, Scandal. Good revenge melos, the hallmark of them is that the bad guys get comeuppance, they get appropriately punished, and I think Secret achieved that in a really fulfilling way, because every single person was punished appropriately. You know, Do-hoon was punished, Do-hoon's mother was punished, who else, even like, you know, Min-hyuk was punished. They were all punished in as much as they needed to be for the things that they had done. It was appropriate, the punishment that they got. And so at the end of it, you do feel a sense of like, I'm glad everyone got what they deserved. And this ties like why revenge melos are popular in Korea. It's very much to do with a concept called Han, which I'm gonna ask ODESSA to explain and talk about.
Well, I was going to say, I would love to hear you talk more about revenge melos, because I have not watched as many of them as you have. But one thing that I've noticed watching a few of them is that I started first watching them with the idea that like revenge is just the stupidest thing. Why would anyone want to make a whole show about it? And from a white American point of view, it's not something that like we talk about a lot. Nobody I know talks about getting vengeance on people. It's such a weird concept, right? And then watching them, I realized that the real topic of revenge melos, they're about pain.
And
like
justice.
That's what they're about, pain and justice, right? But like how you deal with pain. To me, that's the most interesting part of them. But you're right. Like now, when you're describing it, I'm like, yeah, you're right. The justice part is also part of what makes it satisfying, because just watching people be in pain is not so. Yeah, on its own, it's not so much fun. So the justice thing.
Yeah, I completely agree. Because this was my thought when I was Do you remember there was an American show quite a few years back before this show, called Revenge? It was starring Emily Van Camp.
Yeah,
It was on
I do.
ABC, and I actually watched that, and I watched nearly all 5 seasons of it. But for some reason, I couldn't watch the last 5 episodes because I couldn't be bothered. But like, okay, it got really rubbish and makjang at the end, but in the beginning, it was great for the same reason. It was a classic revenge mellow. You know, someone killed her dad, and she goes out to avenge him. But the same as you, when you hear that whole revenge thing, revenge is not a quality. The desire for vengeance is not a quality that I think is a good thing or one that I try to cultivate in any way in my life. But and maybe that's exactly why it's so appealing, because in real life people can't play out their vengeances. They can't exercise their hun, their grudges, their bitterness. That
Right.
Yeah.
stays
Yeah.
inside. But when you watch a drama, somehow it loosens that feeling, and because it gets an expression. Maybe not you can't achieve that in your own life, but the fact that an outlet exists for it helps you to deal with your own bitternesses, disappointments, grudges, and things like that. So like, I don't find it weird now. At the time I found it very like shocking, like, why would you watch a drama like that? That's just, it's got to be bad for you spiritually, right? But I think actually it's the opposite now. I think it's helped me to feel better about, injustice, because even if you can't get that resolution in real life, at least there's a resolution fictionally.
Should I say what Han is
Please, yeah,
briefly?
sorry.
Because the
Sure.
Koreans have done a really good job of coming up with a name for this emotion that I think everybody experiences at some point. But Korea gave it a name and talks about it. And Han means that kind of deep bitterness and anger about terrible things that have happened to you that you really cannot, that you can't respond to, usually. Because Korea is a very hierarchical society. So there are, even today, I see a lot at work. I see powerful people being really cruel to less powerful people. And in Korean society, if you're less powerful, you're just supposed to take it. And so Han describes like the emotion of, of suffering that you have when you know there's nothing you can do to respond to the suffering. There's no way you can fight back.
And
So-
I feel like also some of that that pain and suffering might also be that there's been this really traumatic war, and it's still in living memory, where people were just cut off from their family members, and there's no way for them to see each other unless, like some of them risk their lives trying to see each other. So, I mean, I'm sure that also has a part to play, but like kind of related to what you were saying about not being able to kind of fight back, and what Saya, you were saying about injustice. There is a very common theme in revenge melos, and like I've only seen like 4, so take it with a grain of salt, of just not being able to get justice through the system that's supposed to give you justice. Instead of going through the legal system where we're taught from a young age that the law is fair and it's just and it's going to give you comeuppance to evil people, but that's not reality, right? So we see these themes again and again of like, it's an incarnation of money. It's in this. It's in what other shows have I seen that? But it's just like this complete failure of the legal system and the justice system. And most of the time, you also see like how corrupt that system is, and how if you're rich and powerful, you can just get away with whatever you want. And so it's like, okay, well, if I'm not going to be able to get justice through that, what is my recourse? It's only revenge, like my personal vendetta, right? And it's not realistic, but in a drama, you can see that play out, and eventually it works.
I was just going to add to what Laica was saying earlier about how because Korea has this history of occupation and invasion, and what ODESSA, what you said about how on a personal level in everyday life with, you know, the hierarchical system and stuff like that. But Han is about both things. Like, it's about that feeling on the personal level, and it's also, it's an emotion that characterizes Korea as a nation. Like, this is something that's very internalized in Korean culture, this sense of Han, which I find really interesting. I did quite a bit of reading about it, and I recommend anyone else who's interested to do a bit of reading about it, because it's, you know, it's unique as far as I've come across to have named this emotion as something that is really deeply important to your identity, the way it's important to Korean identity. Can we talk about Bae Soo-bin?
The evil oppa. Talk about him.
Let's talk about Bae Soo-bin, because I actually haven't seen him nice in anything. So this was the first show I saw him in, and then after that,
you're not seeing Shining Inheritance?
No, but
he's
I watched
so
49
nice
days.
in that.
I watched 49 days, and he's as evil as like he's one of those characters that's really interesting, because you don't know from the beginning that he's a bad guy. His villainy is rooted in his weak-willedness and his spinelessness, and having no moral core. So.
Yeah.
Like, I always find those villains the most interesting, because it's too easy to just be bad. It's worse to be weak. I mean, it's like, you know, the Peter Pettigrew of characters. You're more dangerous because you're weak and you're cowardly, and you know.
Nobody finds you threatening because they think you're a nice guy. Yeah, but he hides his evilness on the inside.
Did you feel his ending was appropriate?
His ending was kind of anticlimactic. Like, we all knew that he was going to get punished for what he did, and fair enough that he goes to prison and he loses his power and position that he had been working to protect. But I don't know, it wasn't satisfying. Like, it was a whole lot more satisfying to watch his mom grovel before Yoo-jung, and Yoo-jung just walk out of that jail. That was like the best moment, because Yoo-jung had taken so much from that moment. Like, a lot of, like, that woman had abused her, humiliated her, systematically embarrassed her whenever possible, but Yoo-jung had never hit back. But then she reached a point where, you know, you did something so horrible to her that this woman finally broke. And so that his mother's punishment was utterly satisfying. His not so much, because I think they were trying to end on a note where he feels guilt for what he had done, but that guilt seemed kind of tepid to me. The enormity of what he had done was far too, I don't know, huge, large. It had affected far too many lives for him to feel slightly guilty for what he had done, and sort of for the story to end there.
And it was also almost like he realized that what he had lost personally by doing what he did. Like, you know that scene where she says, like, look at your son, like, what did you, like, look at the future that you took away from yourself and from me. And it was like, okay, and then he finally kind of cried and he felt bad or whatever. But, like, I almost felt like he's making himself look like a better person than he actually is by being like, okay, I'm going to admit to all of my, you know, guilt, and I'm going to go to jail. Like, he was kind of self-satisfied in the end. I don't like that. Like, what was it, that creepy smile in the mirror? I was like, you're a psychopath. What's happening?
Do-hyun is, I think, at the end there, he expresses, he's still, like, so morally shallow that he can't really feel the full extent of what he's done. I think he's, you know, he's shedding tears because because people are mad at him. I think, you know, he's like that shallow. People are mad at him, so now he's sad.
He got found out.
Yeah, he's such a weak person. Yeah, and he's a very believable, like, nothing about this drama is believable. It is set in this it has this fantastic feeling, but really his character, you feel like you know people like him.
The other thing about Do-hyun that what ODESSA said about him being very shallow emotionally, I think that's one of the reasons you can't give him the benefit of the doubt even at the end. Like, not benefit of the doubt as in he's not guilty, but that, you know, he's feeling remorse. It is because nothing, like, no relationship in his life seemed to ever make him happy. Not his parents, not his fiancée, not even that weird thing that he had going with Seyeon. Um, which brings me to Seon, who I thought for most of the drama was probably the sanest character there. And then towards the end, she does that weird jealous girlfriend thing. But, oh, go on. You go on, because I forgot what thing she did. I just remember she did something.
Oh, the thing I was gonna say is, Paroma, because when you were mid watching this and you were telling me, oh yeah, Seon is the most sane character there, and I was like, keep watching. So what did you think of her by the end?
I thought she finally broke. Like she became desperate enough because she, in some ways, she did seem to love Min-hyuk. Whereas with Do-hyun, I think he was the only one paying her any attention. So she never felt anything for Do-hyun. Do-hyun was kind of just there for her.
She was playing with him because she's a rich girl. She was playing with him,
and she said that to him at one point. That, do you think that I would ever consider you seriously? That was she was at least honest with herself throughout, which can't be said for the other characters in the show. But I did think Min-hyuk owed Seon an apology, and I'm glad that he made one, because they had been friends before they became engaged, and how he treated her was pretty awful.
Yeah.
What do you think about the allusion to Wuthering Heights, if you guys are familiar with the story? I know ODESSA is, but...
Oh yeah, English literature major. Yeah.
That is one of my most hated books ever.
I hate that book so much.
I hate it so much.
Yeah, I avoided any class that I could possibly take in university that I would have to read that, because I read it in high school and I hated it.
For anyone who doesn't know it, can you quickly sort of give a summary of it? Of the very basic summary.
Yeah, so basically it's like there's this rich family with a daughter, and they adopt this like vagabond from the street, and he grows up and they fall in love with each other, but they can't be together, and they basically destroy each other's lives by the end.
An excellent summary.
It's very dark.
Yeah, it's very dark. I hated that book so much when I read it as a teenager. I was like, why would anybody write this book?
Same here.
And I think I appreciate it a lot more now. It's been like 25 years since I read it. So now I go back to, like, I've read parts of it again, and I've read people writing about it. And now, like, I can see that from my perspective now, I totally understand what that book is about. It's like, I read it as a teenager hoping for a romance and hoping things would be happy. And now I look at it and I'm like, yeah, that is a picture of like two toxic people destroying each other through what they think is love. And I've seen that, that is one of the things that happens sometimes when people fall in love for all the wrong reasons.
No, I agree. It's like, I also, like, I saw the last name Bronte, and I was like, oh, this is going to be like Jane Eyre. It's going to have a happy ending. And I think it's partly my fault for having those expectations.
I love
Jane Eyre.
It's
not very similar to that at all. Yeah, I love Jane Eyre too. It's a very different book from Wuthering Heights. But you're right. You know, like, San says that to him. She's like, read this and find out what happens to a love that turns into revenge.
Yeah. Oh, into revenge? Or
into revenge. So it was very thematically relevant, for sure, to his story.
Who do you think it applies the most to?
I wonder. I think the thing that struck me the most about the comparison between Wuthering Heights and Secret is that Wuthering Heights is about, it's about like people who confuse sexual attraction for love. Like these people are really hot for each other, basically, in like whatever the 19th century way of saying that is. Heathcliff and Catherine are really nuts about each other, but for all the wrong reasons. They have unstable personalities. They don't have anything in common, basically.
Like this dark obsession.
Yeah, like it is obsession. And it's believable obsession in the sense that, sometimes people are just crazy about each other for all the wrong reasons, And Secret is about, I really think, Min-hyuk and the two of them are crazy about each other for all the wrong reasons. They, I believe that they are attracted to each other. I do believe that, but I also don't think they should end up together in the end.
I actually didn't I don't know if I'm the odd one out, but like I didn't really feel I felt the chemistry between the actors, but I didn't really understand why they would fall in love with each other, and I didn't find their love story very believable. It like the actors sold it, but I was far more moved by like her story with her son and how she, like the only time I cried was when at the end when she gives up her son and just wants him to be happy. That I don't know if you guys agree with me about like not really feeling that it was a romance or feeling that they really had a rapport. What do you guys think?
I agree. Like they went from the whole, I don't know. They only had before that final scene. There was a gap of what, a year or 2 years, right? He went off somewhere, then he came back. I think that was a bizarre penance that he did. I don't know how going off somewhere is a penance, but whatever. The thing is that right before that, I think they had one date, sort of. Mm-hmm. And that's it. So you go from there, problematic relationship, one date, gap of a couple of years, then he comes back and then they have that kiss. They didn't actually show us much in terms of development where this relationship is concerned. The thing, it was mostly all through Min-hyuk's point of view. Like he saw her at first as a toll booth operator, and then as someone who murdered his fiancée, he sort of became hell-bent on destroying her life and making sure that she gets properly punished. And then he watched her and realized that, okay, there is something weird going on because this does not seem like a person who, there is something odd going on here. He goes with his instinct and then he finds out that she wasn't the murderer after all. All of that stuff is fine, but that's his developing opinion about the girl. Whereas from Yoo-jung's perspective, here is a bizarre rich guy who hands her an expensive diamond ring, and then next she meets him, he's attacking her on a stairwell. And what I think after that she meets him and she's just come out of prison. She's been told that her child is dead, and he is obsessively hounding her. It just, it's for her. The only way that she's perceiving him for most of the drama is as this very privileged and I don't know, bizarre guy.
Yeah, and I sorry, do you mind if I say one thing?
Go on.
I only felt like I totally agree that it's mostly through his perspective, and I only felt like we got a real expression of how she actually feels in two different scenes. One is when basically his father calls her to their house and he's like, tries to get rid of her, and then she leaves and then she goes back to her home and then he's like banging on the door and telling her to come out, and she basically says like, I don't want to see you anymore, and she gives him this whole speech about like, it's really hard for me to see you, and like I do feel guilty that even if it wasn't me who was driving, I still feel like I killed, Ji-hye, the girlfriend, and I still feel guilty for that. And whenever I see you, I feel that guilt, and it's so hard for me to see you. And I felt like so much, I was like, wait, is this how she really feels? Like that was the most emotionally honest I'd seen her, and because she always just smiles and covers up her feelings. And at that moment, I was like, oh my God, this feels really genuine. And the other moment where she actually talks about her feelings is when she goes to her, to her urn, like the dead girlfriend's urn, and says, I'm really sorry. Just for one day, I wanted to accept his heart. And I'm like, what is this? Like, this is the only time we're getting an emotion from you. Like, I don't really understand what's going on here. I don't know what you guys felt about that.
I felt like the reason they ended up together and were perfect, not perfect really, but the reason they fit together is because what she tells us in those scenes when she's really honest, she tells us like she can't get over this accident either. Like this accident defined her life, and we know he can't get over this accident. So like there were points, like my favorite scene is the one where he tells her like that he was able to keep going after his girlfriend died by hating her, and then he tells her like, you can hate me too, for it to like give you courage now. And it was like, whoa. But then the overarching thing going on here, is that neither of them can move on from this accident, but everybody else they know has. Like, everybody else is like going on with their lives, and these people can't move on with their lives. So like they're trapped together.
Yeah, that's a good point.
True. So from that point of view, I guess there could be nobody else for these two, because who else is going to understand how broken they are inside?
Yeah, it's not healthy.
It's not healthy, but you need someone to talk to, and the only other person that these two could talk to about this and all the dark feelings that comes thereof is, well, each other. So yeah.
And also, like, I feel like there's that one sentence that she leaves with when she leaves him that day, when they break up after spending that day together and that night together, and then she's leaving and he's like reading the book that she left behind, saying that, like, in the end, if you don't love, you're not living. And she's walking away thinking to herself, the way you know that you loved is that you were in pain and you hurt me so much. And I'm like, really? Is this supposed to be like some kind of romantic confession? But that's like the theme of the drama. It's like love is pain, and the more you hurt, that means that's the more you love the person.
I don't remember this.
Yeah, it happened. Like, I just watched it, so it's like when how he's like, just give me one day to spend with you, and they kind of try to forget all their problems, and they just spend this like idyllic day together, and then they spend the night together, and then she leaves before he wakes up, and this is her narration in her mind as she's walking away.
Yeah, I remember that scene because I remember that, like, love is pain is kind of like her motto. Like, she does not. Yeah, she's so self-sacrificing. Because, like, in all of her relationships as well, we saw it already with Do-hyun, we saw it with her father, with everybody. She exists to take care of other people.
I just want to go back to what Laica was, what you were saying about us, whether we bought the romance, and having listened to you guys right now, I'm like reconsidering my past self and thinking, what was wrong with you? Or maybe that was the me who had come off reading Twilight and stuff. But
oh God, please no! Don't tell me you read those books.
I read them well before they were famous, when they had the ugly old covers. So I count this as my redemption from that. Anyway, so maybe, like, I'm thinking now, because I would have said yes, I did buy it, but I'm thinking now maybe I confused buying the chemistry as buying the romance. But then at the same time, I think, although, like, all of us know what a healthy relationship looks like and what an unhealthy one looks like, I also think that as much as healthy relationships exist, I think unhealthy relationships exist even more. Like, this kind of relationship can easily exist. Like, it's something that is, angst is found more often in reality than a healthy relationship. And like what ODESSA was saying about why would these two have why did they fit, why did they work, because they, like you were saying, because they were scarred by the same thing, and because neither of them have anybody else. Like, there's not one other person in the world for them who is, apart from Kwang-soo.
Oh, I loved Kwang-soo.
He was my favorite. Another puppy. Like, we like puppies here. He was the puppiest. Anyway. Okay.
He was the driver / assistant that Min-hyuk took everywhere.
Yeah.
He was ultimately he worked ultimately under Min-hyuk's dad's orders. So when Min-hyuk's dad asked him to kind of stop Min-hyuk from rushing after Yoo-jung after that disastrous dinner, he did that. He stopped Min-hyuk, and Min-hyuk was struggling and glaring at Kwang-soo, and that kind of gave me heart pangs. Because well, he kind of considered him a younger brother, so it's
I mean, they had a really genuine relationship. Actually, if we're going to talk about if there are any good relationships in this show, that was it was a warm and actually more equal, not necessarily equal in terms of power, but they had there was a flow of emotion between them that was equal. Like, they both cared about each other. So that was really
like Kwang-soo was there for Min-hyuk. Like, when he was going through those torturous 5 years, he was there all the time. So he had seen Min-hyuk go through the stages of grief and then land on revenge and then refuse to leave. So.
And he took care of him.
Yeah, he did. That's true.
And then he fell in love with what was her name? Harry? Her name? I can't remember her
Harry,
name.
yeah,
Yeah,
Harry, I
the
think.
little cute Yoo-jung's little cute friend.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
right.
Those four women were very. That
Yeah,
was like
those
an
are
oasis
nice.
of like happiness and normalcy in this like
Yes.
whole miserable show. Just the four of them together
Yeah,
and
they
how
were
they were
great.
like there for each other. Yeah, that was nice.
Oh, a question. Min-hyuk's stepmother, I didn't really understand his hatred for her. Is it because
So
she married his dad at all?
I think it's because she came into their household so soon after his mother. I think the implication was that his mother committed suicide.
Yeah.
At least that's
Yeah,
what I got. And
no,
so
that was
he felt like she was like this younger woman who had basically like stolen his father away from his mother and basically caused his mother to commit suicide and like just came in right away after she,
because
right
she
after
was
she
the
died and took
nurse or she was something. She was somehow already associated with the household, and she was the housekeeper.
yeah, so I think his mother brought her in to care for the children because she was I think mentally ill for a long time. Is what I got.
Okay.
And you know how he was saying my mother was always miserable in this house, and then his stepmother said your mother was unable to care for you guys, and even the father said like I never saw her smile after that day when I opened the hotel. So like they don't really spell it out, but I got the feeling that his mother was mentally ill for a long time and she couldn't really be a proper mother to her kids. So maybe she brought the stepmother in to help, to be there for them. And so she genuinely loved the kids, but Min-hyuk always resented her for, replacing his mom.
Okay. And Minju, the younger sister, she was also a stepdaughter, right? Because there was this weird
Yeah.
thing that the stepmom seemed to think that she has to preserve the sort of the lie that Minju is her own daughter. Like they
Yeah.
had that, they constantly had that exchange. So that was, yeah.
Yeah, that was kind of sweet, actually. I found their relationship sweet.
And Minju's crush on the lawyer, I think who was it?
Yeah, he was a
Irish
lawyer.
kind of
Yeah.
person.
Yes. Oh, I forgot
was
about
cute.
that. Yes.
I don't
Yeah.
remember
That
this
was
at
cute.
all. What is this?
Oh, and Arushi was again another Choi, something Choi.
Yeah, Attorney Choi.
Sorry, Attorney Choi. Yeah, so Attorney Choi was also someone else who supported Min-hyuk. Like even though his own father didn't, he trusted him. You remember Min-hyuk used to call him Kyung.
Mm.
Yeah.
Oh, him! Oh, I liked him
Yeah,
so
the
much.
guy with the glasses. Yeah.
Who was the actor again?
Lee
Lee
something.
Seung-jun. Lee Seung-jun. Okay. Oh yeah, he was one of the best characters for me. Even though I completely forgot about him until now.
What did you
Oh.
guys think? What did you guys think of the fact that, like, how usually when you have these kind of, a poor, hardworking, self-sacrificing girl meets a chaebol and they fall in love, although it's a very different version of that story. Like, the hero has to kind of reevaluate the fact that his father's company is practically like evil and corrupt, and he does something about it, or he like decides to leave, or like there's some kind of reckoning with that. But in this one, it was just like, how can I save my father's company? Even though it's very clear they're like embezzling lots of money and taking it off the top and engaging in all these like corrupt business practices, and there's no real like nobody really ever addresses that. It's just about like how can we all avoid jail, and then they like successfully avoid jail, and then there's like no other like they don't address that. He just like loyally becomes his dad's like worker, and he like gives the president position to the lawyer, and everybody's happy at the end. I was like, wow, this is kind of different. Like, what did you guys think about that?
Yeah, you're right. Definitely, there's something missing there, but I guess I didn't feel like there was something missing because it all took place in this weird kind of. It didn't feel like the real world. There weren't a lot of political issues intruding into this like emotional drama. Like I was really focused on the emotions. So like the last thing I wanted was for us to like go off and have a few episodes about the shareholders or something. You know what I mean?
But I mean, we did get a lot of shareholders, and I like fast forwarded those scenes because I didn't care, But like, it was weird because it was so caught up in the company politics, but at the same time, they're like didn't care about the implications of those company politics. I don't know. It's just something that struck me as weird.
I just thought that this was not that drama. This story was not about that. Here it was more about Min-hyuk stepping up for his family, for the company, and not just staying sort of holed up in his office, obsessing over the death of his fiancée, because that's what he was doing for the longest time. Towards the end of it, when he was fighting for his dad's company, he was finally coming out of the hole. I think that was what that part of the story was all about.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you guys wanted to add before we sort of move towards closing?
The one thing I would add about Secret is that the director of Secret is the guy who went on to do Descendants of the Sun and Goblin.
Oh, really?
Really?
What?
Interesting.
Why didn't
Yeah.
I know this?
Wait, there were two directors. Which one?
Oh yeah, you're right.
And Baek Sung-hoon was also one of the directors who went on to do Descendants of the Sun. They both went to Descendants of the Sun. So I think, like, for me, I think one of the reasons Secret succeeds, you know, even though the story is so insane, is because those guys know how to tell a good story.
Yeah, the story is definitely very well told. It's the pacing and it kind of, nothing, it never lags. It just keeps going.
I guess the thing that strikes me, if there's a theme that runs throughout the whole thing, it's that, like, love and hate are very similar emotions, at least for these people in this story.
Mm-hmm. I can see that.
Because hate is, you know, hate is the emotion that dominates his life, and then the whole story is the story of Min-hyuk's hate turning into this other thing, which he considers to be love, and that, to me, that's the one thing that holds it all together.
I can see that, and also, like, even for the other characters, it's very easy for love and hate to kind of switch from one to the other and go back and forth. Like, same with Do-hoon. Like, even after it's weird because in the beginning of the drama, he, like, doesn't seem to love her anymore, but then he can't let go of, like, every time he sees her, he has such a visceral reaction. And it seemed like not only that he's just afraid of his secret getting found out, but, like, he can't let go of her in some twisted way.
And how love and hate are basically both some expression of obsession. So basically it all comes back to obsession.
Yeah.
And how to healthily channel it and what happens when it becomes unhealthy, right?
Love is pain.
Love is pain.
You hurt me the most.
That's a great place
so I
to
must
end.
love you the most.
That's a really good place to end.
Yes.
I just wanted to add one last thing because what I found myself doing after I watched this is basically looking for the next drama that would give me the same fix. So what I had, it took a while to find it, but Golden Cross came out, I think, a year later or something. So Golden Cross hit all of the same spots that Secret did. Do you guys have any recommendations to add?
Oh, I'm going to add a recommendation that is totally different. I'm thinking not of a melodrama, but of a show where the people were, like, really in love, and it feels like there's what, I don't even know how to say it, but this sort of darkness, the darkness under the love that we get in Secret, and that is Secret Love Affair. Very similar name, very different drama, but also very good.
Okay, and also if you liked this pair, I'm sure everyone knows the drama already, but Ji-sung and Hwang Jung-eum later teamed up again for Kill Me, Heal Me. Very different drama, but still, like, I loved it. I thought it was great.
Yeah, and I watched that when it was airing, and then when I watched them in this, I think part of me was so attached to them together in that drama, and they were so much happier and better together that I was just like, oh my god, I miss them together there. But yeah, that one is really good. Yeah, it's happier. Yeah. It will give you a happier feeling than this, for sure. I don't watch a lot of melodramas, but this is kind of an underrated show, but it's called Scandal, A Shocking and Wrongful Incident. Terrible title. Really good drama.
Oh, I started this because of you.
Yeah.
It's so good. And, like, as you watch it, it just gets better. Like, it starts out with a lot of misery, like this one, but it just keeps, like, and then you get to a certain point, and it just, like, the tension and the suspense just go, and you just can't, like, stop watching. Maybe, like, the last 5 or 6 episodes, or even the last 10 episodes. And it really surprised me, even after watching dramas for, like, 7 or 8 years. It really surprised me, and the writing was and the acting was incredible. So I highly recommend that.
Paroma, do you have anything to add?
I wanted to recommend Kill Me Heal Me too, so let me just plug that in again and say that if you guys felt unsatisfied by how Min-hyuk and Yoo-jung's relationship ended, or the point where we left them, then you should definitely watch it because it's all about their relationship. It's fantastic.
It's a healing watch.
It's a
To heal the
watch,
wounds
yeah.
that you're left with after this one.
Yeah,
Oh, good.
less killing, more healing, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
The killing is all metaphorical in that one.
So that's a really great place to stop. Thank you, everybody, especially Odessa, for joining us today. And of course, you're going to join us again soon. I'm not going to leave it open for you to say no.
Oh, I hope so. Yes, I will. I'll be back. This is fun.
Yes, we love having you.
So subscribe to this podcast for more awesome K-drama discussions.
And leave us a review on iTunes. We really appreciate it.
Bye!
Bye!